It's no secret that since their far from perfect season, the Warriors have been faced with a dilemma for next year. Do they make a move for a star and give up their young talent to allow the Splash Bros to win now, or do they blow everything up and build around James Wiseman for the future? If you guys watched my last Warriors video, you know my take on this, because with Steph Curry becoming a free agent sooner rather than later, in my eyes, this team needs to build a winner around him so he doesn't leave them for nothing. But then, the draft lottery happened, and I got to thinking, what if the Warriors could make a move for a star without giving up James Wiseman? Sure, this may not sound realistic because almost every team would want James Wiseman in a trade for their star, but the Warriors do have 2 lottery picks, which could be very enticing for teams, especially this year because of how stacked the draft class truly is. Today we have to talk Golden State Warriors. Now this team can make moves to set them up for right now and in the future by keeping James Wiseman. And let me just say, you'll want to stick around for the whole video because the last trade might just surprise you. But before we get into that, if you've been enjoying the content, it would be absolutely clutch if you subscribed if you're new and join the Woods crew. Fun fact, over 95% of you guys who've been watching the videos consistently aren't even subscribed. So if you just hit that sub button below, I could go full-time very soon and make videos like this every single day. Now I know it was reported that the Golden State Warriors are expected to deal Wiseman in the 7th overall pick for a star this offseason, solely because of the fact that there is growing concern about Curry's future with the Warriors. But the Warriors have one of the best front offices in the league, so if they know that James Wiseman has what it takes to be their guy after Curry regresses, then they will do whatever it takes to keep him because they have other assets that could get stars. But aside from the solid young talent on their bench that the Warriors could trade, they have all their draft picks through 2023, so if they're willing to part with those, they could definitely get a star while keeping Wiseman on the roster. Before we get into these moves though, we have to talk about what this team needs for their team next year besides the obvious star power, because in my eyes, people are not talking about this enough, which has led to many completely random, unrealistic, and not even good trades getting debated between fans and analysts. For the Warriors, throughout the season, it was very clear that they did not have the right pieces around Steph Curry to win now, even when Klay comes back. Don't get me wrong here, this team has a solid roster, but there are always moves that can be made, especially if this team wants to go from the 9th seed in the West to a championship contender next year. And one of the moves I believe that this team needs to make is for a consistent veteran big man that they can rely on all stages of the game. It was clear last year that although James Wiseman showed promise at the center position with flashes of dominance, he just isn't ready to be a consistent starting center on a contender, and rightly so. Because of his lack of play in college, Wiseman is basically a raw prospect out of high school and was thrown into the NBA without any summer league or anything. And especially after Wiseman's injury, it was clear that this team needed a big man who could start for this team while Wiseman develops. Not to mention, Wiseman coming off the bench would elevate the depth of this team in a big way. Aside from that, it was also clear that this team needed players who were capable of being consistent shooters from deep. I know this sounds crazy because of the fact that the Warriors have 2 of the best shooters of all time, but it's true. If you watched the Warriors at all last year, you would know that oftentimes this team would leave players completely wide open from 3. Draymond Green, and double team Steph Curry, which really hurt the Dubs offense. Although Draymond said that he would be improving his jumper this offseason, I think the Warriors still need to add some shooting, just in case Draymond can't take that step. Acquiring a couple 3-and-D wing players or guards that could come off the bench or start would be ideal for this team along with a big man. But with that being said, let's just get right into the moves that could do just that for the Warriors. We all know by now that this Warriors team, and in particular the Splash Bros, play their best when they have an old school center that can be a lob threat and rebounding machine. I mean, if you just look back at all their title runs, they had guys like Bogut, Looney, and similar players being the traditional big man for the team and made the offense flow a lot better. With Wiseman still developing, this team needs to get that guy, and there's no better player to target right now than Jonas Valanciunas. Now I know that many of you guys might not even view Valanciunas as a star for the Memphis Grizzlies, but if you've watched his game at all, you would know that he's an under the radar center that is exactly what the Warriors need: consistency. Valanciunas is a classic bruiser center who can be a consistent double-double every game, not to mention that he can space the floor, being that he shot 37% from 3 last year with the Grizzlies. Valanciunas is viewed as a top 10 center among analysts, and in my eyes, if given a bigger role on a team like the Warriors, he might even be able to crack the top 5 if he makes the most of his opportunity. In order for this trade to go down, the Warriors would have to send off Kevon Looney, Kelly Oubre via sign and trade along with their 14th pick in the draft this year. For the Warriors, this is one of those sneaky moves that could have a tremendous impact this season for them. All they would have to do is give up Oubre, who hasn't exactly been the best fit for this team anyways, their lower lottery pick in the draft, along with Looney, who just makes the money work. Valanciunas might not be the biggest name, but there is no doubt in my mind the 28 center in the middle of his prime would be the perfect fit for this team, with his ability to get tough buckets and boards down low, along with spacing the floor with his great shooting splits. For the Grizzlies, they make this move to get younger. Oubre is only 25 years old, and a lottery pick could help their young core in Ja Morant and Dillon Brooks even more. This would clear some cap for the Grizzlies and get players that better fit their timeline for the future. Not to mention, this deal also keeps Wiggins, who has been solid for this team and could definitely continue to be that guy or be a trade piece in an additional deal. Now that we have the big man issue out of the way for this team, we have to talk about the other 2 stars that would fit perfectly in this system and have a big impact for this team. Like I said earlier, it was clear that this team needed more shooting, star power, and defense never hurts either. In my eyes, if this team were to get a center like Valanciunas, all that would be left to complete their starting lineup would be getting more star powered at the forward position. That could be a third option for this team as well. And there are two players I believe could be the perfect fit for this team that the Warriors could actually get. But we have to start out with the guy that's been in all the rumors. That player being Pascal Siakam of the Raptors. You guys know I had to put this move in the video, but what you might not expect is that the Warriors could potentially get this deal done without including James Wiseman. It has been very clear that after the Raptors won their chip and Kawhi left, they just didn't have what it takes to win at the highest level, and in fact fell off a lot more than people thought. Coming into the season, many believed that the Raptors were a playoff lock like always. But when they failed to make it, this raised some major questions about this team's future. Many people believe that this team could try to rebuild around VanVleet and Siakam for the future, but now it's looking like this team might try and blow things up and trade both of these guys in order to rebuild. There have been many rumors surrounding Pascal Siakam and the Warriors lately, but almost all of it involves sending the young stud James Wiseman and the 7th overall pick in the draft to get him. But in my eyes, there was a way the Dubs could get this deal done without including Wiseman. In order for the Warriors to pull off this monumental move, in my eyes, they would need to trade away Andrew Wiggins, Eric Pascal, Jordan Poole, the 7th overall pick this year, and their 2023 first round pick. Now I know, this might seem like a lot for Siakam, but keep in mind, the Warriors would have to give up a lot if they don't include Wiseman, because you better believe that the Raptors would want to get Wiseman desperately. Despite Wiggins being great for the Warriors last season, it is obvious that Siakam is better, and even though he just had a down season, don't forget that many people thought he would take an MVP type leap going into last year, and with some new scenery in Golden State, he could still do just that. If the Warriors don't want to give up Wiseman, they will still have to give up some of their young depth, and for the Raptors, they make this move to kickstart their rebuild, and hey, maybe if Andrew Wiggins returns to Canada where he's from, he could be the guy for the Raptors and take a star leap. You never really know. But for Siakam, he would provide almost everything this team could ask for. He's a solid defender, playmaker, and scorer that could be the third option this team needs. The issue here is on the Raptors side, because they have been known to invest in their talents in the long haul, being that they have one of the best development teams in the entire world. It is hard to see this team moving on from Siakam when his value is at a recent low, and because they wouldn't be getting James Wiseman back, which is why I have a backup plan for the Warriors to make that could still get them the guy they need to complete their starting lineup. That plan being to trade for Jeremy Grant to the Pistons. Jeremy Grant was one of the more interesting players to keep up with last season because he was one of those guys that was able to step up when given a bigger role. When in Denver with the Nuggets, Grant was primarily a 3-and-D guy who guarded the opposing team's best player. But he bet on himself and took his talents to Detroit, where he became a star caliber player on both sides of the ball. Last season, Grant started off the season hot, averaging over 20 points a game while being the same guy on the defensive side of the ball that he was in Denver. Being that Grant is 6'8", he could definitely be a versatile defender and scorer this team needs, and could honestly be interchangeable with Draymond Green on both sides of the ball if he gets his jump shot up, which could be very scary for this Warriors team. This trade would be a bit complicated, but for it to make sense for the Pistons, we just had to get a third team involved. In this trade, the Warriors would send off Kelly Oubre, cap filler, and a first round pick to the Pacers. The Pacers would send Domantas Sabonis to the Pistons, and the Pistons would send Jeremy Grant to Golden State. There's a lot to cover here, but for the Pistons, they lucked out and got the first overall pick. So if they think Cade Cunningham can make them a winning team right now, they make a move for another star in Sabonis to pair with him. The Pacers, they need to switch things up, so they make this move to get Oubre and whoever the 7th overall pick in the draft is. In this case, the Pacers would also more than likely trade someone like Miles Turner to get even more assets. But regardless, this team gets a great young talent from the draft and a solid starter in Oubre. The Warriors get Grant, who like I said is one of the better two-way players in the game and would be exactly what this team needs. If they made this trade, they could still make the Valanciunas trade as well. They would just have to give up Wiggins instead, which would give this team a starting lineup of Curry, Klay, Draymond, Grant, and Valanciunas, which in my eyes is a championship favorite, especially if Klay's at least 70% of what he was before his injuries. To say the least, this Warriors team will have to make some big decisions, but in my eyes, they could get some great pieces that are even better fit for this team without giving up Wiseman. So they'll be built for a new chip this year and a new dynasty with Wiseman in the future. Regardless of whether or not these trades go down, the Warriors need to make some moves, and if they choose correctly, they could very well be in contention for many years to come. But I guess all we can do is sit back and watch and see what they do. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll catch you on the next one. Woods out.